The U.S. Postal Service is facing three unhappy choices, all of which will cost us more money. There's a fourth one worth considering. It might even mean cheaper postage stamps. I'll be right back. And now the post office is about to take another nick out of your pocketbook. Remember back to 1971 when the so-called independent Postal Service took over from the inefficient, patronage-bound old Postal Department? It was launched with great fanfare. Service was going to be better, automated equipment would keep pace with increased volume, and postal workers would be happier and more efficient. There was even some hope that in time the Postal Service would be self-sufficient, and there'd be no more annual deficits funded by our tax dollars. Well, they did discover advertising, bright new posters on the walls of every post office urging patrons to collect stamps. Money orders were redesigned, signs became bilingual, someone designed a new logo, and ads ran in cities all over America asking the citizens to please be patient about the slow deliveries. And they did streamline things. Saturday deliveries were eliminated in residential areas. Weekday deliveries were cut back. Some services previously available in post offices 6 days a week were cut to 5. The cost of a first-class stamp went up and up and up. Up 67% just since the new Postal Service came into being. Something else went up, too, in these 4 years. The Postal Service's annual deficit rose from $175 million to an expected $500 million this year. There are 4 ways they can deal with this problem. They can, of course, raise the price of stamps again, or they can cut services to the public again, or third, Congress can reward the Postal Service with a fatter subsidy. Right now, it's about $1.5 billion a year. Some congressmen would choose the subsidy. It's better than raising the price of stamps or cutting service because subsidies are less visible and so produce fewer howls from the people. But as I said, there's a fourth choice. A recently issued study by the House of Representatives on how the Postal Service affects small firms reports that private postal firms have shown, quote, that they can provide postal services at less cost and more dependably than the present postal system, end quote. So far, they've only been allowed to handle third class and packages. Now, some of these independent firms have asked for permission to deliver first-class mail. Why shouldn't we, the people, ask Congress to let them, at least on a test basis? We could tie one little string to the deal. Last year, when Congress approved a bill to help save the railroads in the Northeast Corridor, it included a provision designed to encourage the railroads to seek new capital through employee stock ownership plans. The idea was to make the employees stockholders, part owners of the railroads they worked for, thus giving them a vital stake in the efficient operation of the railroads. We could do the same with independent postal companies. Give a postal employee a good job in a private postal system, plus a piece of the action. And who knows, we might just see the return of the 3-cent stamp one day. And that's a compromise on my part because I remember when they were only 2 cents. What's your viewpoint? I'd like to hear from you. Just drop me a line, care of this station. This is Ronald Reagan. Thank you for listening. Everybody talks about the Postal Service. Some even want to do something about it. I'll be right back. On one of these broadcasts several weeks ago, I spoke about the soaring subsidies and operating losses of reorganized United States Postal Service. My comments touched some nerves, a few of them raw. I received a sack full of mail, most of it in agreement with what I'd said. Many told their own horror stories of bad service. One man in charge of mailing operations for a large company with plants throughout the country had been monitoring the speed of mail delivery between the company's installations. Consistently, he found that there was nothing consistent about deliveries. Often coast-to-coast letters would be delivered in 2 days, but those between offices 100 miles apart might take a week. A Pasadena couple mailed 2 packages within 5 minutes of one another to Washington, D.C. The one sent by way of an independent parcel delivery firm arrived in good shape 2 days later. The one sent from the post office by parcel post took 6 days and was mangled. The producer of these broadcasts received plaintive calls from several radio stations recently, complaining that the broadcast material hadn't reached them by the scheduled air date, despite more than a week's leeway allowed for delivery. Most of the feedback I received was in the same vein, except for the reaction of one postal employees union official in a Midwestern city. He seemed to think I was accusing all postal employees of being laggards, which I wasn't. He also thought I was criticizing the Postal Service for not making a profit, which I wasn't. Anyway, he's entitled to draw his own conclusions, and he sent a flyer to all 1,000 members of his local, asking them to write to my local sponsor and give him a piece of their minds. So far, the sponsor hasn't received a single card or letter. You suppose the Postal Service sent them to the wrong city? Several writers offered constructive suggestions. One lady who lives in a working-class neighborhood where most people go to the post office at lunch hour or on Saturday mornings noted that week after week, when the lines were longest, the fewest windows were open, even though there seemed to be plenty of postal employees in the building. I don't know the cause of this, but maybe the Postmaster General should visit the big supermarket chains. They regularly monitor the flow of shoppers at various hours and days and adjust the number of check stands open to fit changing customer patterns. In my earlier broadcast, I spoke about the independent, privately owned postal companies that deliver packages and third-class mail. I heard from an executive of one of them. His firm is now testing delivery of some national magazines in selected markets. He had two proposals. First, that the independent postal firms be allowed to deliver your utility bills. He estimates the utilities could cut postage costs about in half. That might even help stave off some rate increases as fuel costs soar. Another fuel-saving idea he offered: permit the independents to put their mail in your mailbox. An archaic law permits only the U.S. Postal Service this privilege at present. Technically, your neighbor is violating the law if he leaves a note in your mailbox. Not having access to mailboxes, the independents usually deliver their mail in polyethylene bags. These are a derivative of petroleum. So if the independents could use the mailbox and dispense with the bags, we save that much more fuel. Ideas worth considering. This is Ronald Reagan. Thanks for listening.